Good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to the Regional Council meeting of February the 26th, 2024. I'd like to acknowledge traditional territory of our friends and neighbors, the Denizah and Cree, and the Dene Nations of Fort Nelson and Prophet River. I'd like to recognize the treaty and the rights inherent in our common treaty. Please be advised that tonight's meeting is available for the public to attend virtually, is being streamed and recorded. Are there any council additions to tonight's agenda? Councilor Andrews?
I have one about our local rangers and community requested training.
Was that old business or is that something new?
It's, well, I guess it could be something under old business. It's to do with emergency response training, EOC training.
Okay, 9.1 under new business. Ranger discussion. Okay. Is there any others? Oh. Yeah, okay. Staff, have you got any additions to the agenda?
No, Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, public comment period. Ms. Vandersteen, would you like to speak?
Yes, please. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Just wanted to let you know that I am here virtually this evening in case there are any questions that you'd like to direct to me during Admin Report 08 on the Visitor Center. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Is there any other public or gallery in the room that would like to comment on anything on tonight's agenda? No? Okay, adoption of the agenda, please, as modified. Moved by Councillor Souls, second by Councillor Andrews. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. There are two sets of minutes, one from the Regional Council meeting of February 12th, and one from the Committee of the Whole meeting of February the 12th for adoption, please. Moved by Councillor Enoch, second by Councillor Andrews. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, all in favor of adoption? Opposed? Those are adopted. Is there any business arising from those minutes? Council? Staff? No, thank you. Okay, that takes us straight to admin report number 0624, the 44th Street Sewer Rehabilitation Tender Award.
We're missing some people tonight, so I guess I can speak to it. And I was supposed to check into something and I didn't do that. This is related, Mayor, to the 44th Street rehabilitation tender that was discussed at the last meeting. We've recommending to award to Napit Industries for the contract amount of 4.911. Question regarding the contingency, which I need to get back to. I can clarify for council. I had a question today regarding the contingency component. Typically, the contingency is something that we have as part of our budget process. The contract amount is usually the contract amount, and we'll have a contingency component. So I'll confirm the contingency piece with council when I am able to circle back and just crack open to take a look to see if the contract had anything in it specific. Okay. The award amount for the project, however, would be $4.911 million for that
Question, Councillor Irwin.
Yeah, I'm really concerned that we're even entertaining the notion to rip up a whole street and not re-asphalt it for 8 months later or whatever. It says that asphalt work will be conducted under a separate contract and may not occur till 2025. So, like, is that the best we can do? Like, what will we do for residents living along there?
So
Just to declare, I do have a conflict because I live on that street, but I mean, I'm speaking for the public good because there's other people too.
Well, the challenge, it's an extremely significant scope of work. So it comes down to the scope of work, weather, material supplies, other issues. So the reality, it has nothing to do with a separate contract. It has everything to do with the ability to finish and get that road button up to asphalt in time. It's essentially to be able to schedule that in. That whole project, that whole road needs to be dug up to get that whole complete sewer line replaced. So when you run into a short construct, the reason why we want to award right now is so we can hit the ground running as soon as it's processed. Can't sit here and commit to having asphalt on that road before winter because a lot of things can happen between then and now. That's the best I can say. It has nothing to do with the way the contract's laid out or anything like that. It strictly has to do with the fact that before you can stick asphalt in that road, we have to have it buttoned up. And it's a significant project. It's a very challenging project.
So what mitigation can be put in place? So how will winter plowing look like for people living there? And how in the spring, like, is it just gonna be a mud hole? Like, what will that whole thing look like if in fact we don't get asphalt on it during this season?
So the winter season is the easy part, to be honest with you. Plowing in the gravel road is not much different than plowing on the asphalt road, to be honest.
But will it be gravel or will it just be dug up and just like a muddy, soupy mess?
Well, the intent would be to have the road base reestablished, right? And the appropriate gravels to be prepped for asphalt. It's the challenge comes down to is the time of year that we hit it. So gravel will get mucky, right? But the intent is to have that road put back and compact it to a level that is drivable, like a dirt road would be. And then the hope is that the time of year is the appropriate time when we can get asphalt down, because you can't lay asphalt in the cold weather, right? So given the fact that we can't start it now, because we can't start it until things break up, so we can get into that road when the weather is appropriate. And it's gonna be a long haul to get that project done in those sections that we need to get that sewer line done, because it's all the 44th.
You're not making me feel better. Just saying.
I wish I could, but I'd much rather tell you the reality is over than say,
But we also know our struggles getting asphalt up here. So I'm thinking in my head, it could even be longer. And I just want to make sure that the municipality has a plan to not leave those residents on that street for a year without suitable driving conditions.
it'll be like any other road that we haven't had the ability to asphalt before. It's a pain. I mean, it's absolutely something that we don't
It's
want to have
awful.
to do,
Yeah.
right? I mean, trust me, been there, done that. And and again, during the winter months when the frost is in the road, you can grade that road and plow that road just like easy peasy. It's the traffic on that road when you get breakup and you get the potholes and whatnot, which you're constantly grading the gravel to keep everything kind of tuned up and smart enough and tight until you get the asphalt on. So our goal is to get that asphalt, to get that road paved. Again, it's just, there's certain things that'll be out of our control, because it's just not one little section of road. We're top to bottom replacing whole road.
So does it make any sense then during that time period when it's gonna be the most difficult? Because I get that it's gonna be a compacted road. Wintertime's gonna come, it's gonna freeze, you're gonna grade it appropriately. Springtime comes, it's gonna be potholes. I mean, that, because that's what happens. They get, even, any gravel road that breaks up is gonna be covered in potholes. And so does it make, back in the day that I remember, 44th was the only street going through there. But now 42nd goes all the way through. Does it make sense to divert, like to close that road to the general public except
Yeah.
for local, the folks who
Absolutely.
actually live
Option
on it?
talked about is to have local traffic only. Try to have controlled access.
Yeah.
I mean, that's stuff that we've talked about to mitigate the impacts of the road. You know,
Yeah.
those discussions have occurred. To look after that. It's I mean, optimally, if we can get it done, it'd be paid. That's the intent, right? We just want to advise that it's one of the bigger projects that we have had to do, and rehabilitating something like that. It's much easier to go in and put a new road in. I mean, we get it done quicker and paved if we built something new in a fresh piece of dirt somewhere, right? But going in and navigating around all the utilities, there's a quite high likelihood, given that's one of the most original roads. And in my experience, when we've dug up some of the original roads, you find some interesting items and things that you run into that you don't expect in those roads. It doesn't make a difference how much you geotech them, check the quality condition of the road, you find things. You just do, because back in the day, things were done that weren't necessarily tracked or recorded properly. So we're factoring that in, and we just want to advise people prior to the conversation, so they know going into this that it could be a challenge. And the conversations we've had with our engineers to support from a contract administration perspective in terms of the discussions, the communication, the feedback mechanisms that needs to be in place for those residents is extremely important to them. I've been directly involved in those conversations with our consultants to make sure that, there's not just a simple throw a wooden delineator up and say, okay, this road's closed right now, we start digging up because it's going to be a disruption to that street. I know I'm not helping you, I know.
We're still not.
But if the toilets don't flush, it's even worse.
That sewer
Counselor
line's in bad
Souls.
shape.
Well, just a question and then a comment. Question first, is Nappet ready to go?
Yes.
They're ready to go. So when I say when it's ready, does ready to go mean that there's a whole lot of planning needed on their part in order to get things ready, or they're already kind of anticipating this?
I mean, this is a technicality, to be honest with you. I mean, they're ready to go. I mean, to be honest, we've worked with NAPIT and they've been good with this particular project to look at opportunities to expedite the contract itself, right? So we've actually done some design changes, because it's one thing to have engineers design it and say this is the best approach. Then we've actually gotten under the hood the design with the contractor and made some changes based on their recommendations. Actually helped with some efficiencies, helped save some funds in terms of getting that line straight down the pipe. Because we're actually not gonna put that line back to where the other one is. It's gonna actually go into the road more. But the intent of that is to create some efficiencies and make the job go quicker, probably take a couple of weeks at the end of the day.
So just the comment now is that our saving grace on this one, I wouldn't rule out the potential for the paving of that before this fall. We're starting out in the driest conditions we've ever seen, and that includes soil dryness, and it includes lack of frost. We're not going to be dealing with much of a season at all of breakup as it's going. It lets us start very early. It lets us, as opposed to a non-drought scenario, drought is the time to build things like that's way more efficient than doing it when it's wet.
Yeah.
So that might be a saving grace. That might help you a little bit, because if all goes well, it'll go faster on a dry year.
And the budget
Which we're hoping.
this year.
We're all hoping for a rainy spring. Counselor Andrews, please.
I noticed the line in here that says gravel required for this work will be owner supplied. Do we have that supply? I see there's a line item in the draft budget for supply, and then what potential costs? I'm just trying to get a sunk cost, because for this whole project, we're at roughly 5 million. Then we still got to do asphalt works and gravel.
So the budget, I don't have it off the top of my head, but when you look at the project in the budget binder, it's all in costs. It's over 8 million. So it includes asphalt
Over 8 million.
over 8 million. I think it's 8.7, but I'm going by memory. I haven't quite memorized it.
What? Counselor Dickey, please.
I only have a couple questions because I wasn't here when the tenders went out for this project, but how many meters are we talking to replace? And is the timeline once they start the work, is it like a month or 6 weeks or 2 months?
I don't have the Gantt chart of the project schedule. on top of
And
my
it's
head.
only,
It's the whole section of the
44th.
very top of 44th Street, right to where the intersection hits on 50th Avenue. So it's the whole length of the road, every ounce of sewer line. And then while we're in there, because we've got the road dug up, we're gonna do the water connections also, because even while the water lines in the community were replaced back in the day to plastic from ductile iron, the connections to those water lines weren't. So we've seen the odd failure, so we don't want to have to dig up the brand new road after it's reinstated.
and so that we don't know the meters or whatever that they're replacing, but the cost to resurface and the asphalt is gonna be 8 million for the whole budget. per se, that street can't be longer than 1,000 meters?
It's probably roughly a kilometer long, I think, I can't remember.
Yeah.
You're going right to 53rd Avenue.
Yeah.
It's a significant scope of work.
Yeah.
8.7 million? It's 300,000.
Okay, yep.
Okay, so I would like the discussion to be noted that the NRM will make every attempt to make that road as passable as possible through the entirety of the project for the residents that live there. Yes?
You gotta work with the contractor to make sure that happens, but good try, good try. Yeah.
Let the
okay,
minutes
I can-
reflect.
I can reassure you as council, I can reassure the residents of that street and any one that we'd be utilizing that street, that we will be doing, we're making every effort to mitigate the impacts. But we're literally digging up a street front, top to bottom.
Yeah,
Navigating.
the
around.
contractor should come with a traffic plan, right?
Oh, that's all part of the
Which
contract.
lays
They're
out-
required. That's a
which lays
line,
it all.
that's a line item, yeah. The challenge, honestly, though, is that there'll be times that road's not passable, so there'll be mechanisms, how do we get
The folks.
folks to their house and back again, right? And that's the unfortunate reality when you're doing a rehabilitation project of that magnitude.
That just brought up another thing, because how does that work for people that have mobility issues? Because I know there are at least one household that is wheelchair bound, and transportation has to be with the handy bus. So how does that work?
We have to, that's part of the work that between the contract administrator, so our engineer or consultant engineers who look after the contract, and the requirements of the contractor to ensure that those communications occur, and mechanisms are in place to help alleviate that situation.
Okay.
Right, so it's
That's a common thing with these big projects like this, that they've
Absolutely.
got to be able to deal with people who are immobile and have
yeah,
difficulties.
absolutely. I mean, those conversations, I mean, not specific to who it might be on the road, but all that has been part of the conversation, and I've been very clear, and the group's been very clear, just to make sure that there's been no confusion of the importance of communicating with the residents and making sure that there's a mechanism well ahead of time. So there's a mechanism so that, any of those concerns or hurdles are dealt with in a timely manner.
Okay, council's wishes. There is a recommendation on page 17.
I'll make,
Counselor Schultz,
I make the recommendation that Napa Industries Limited be awarded the 44th Street Sewer Rehab Underground Project in the amount of 4911000 plus contingency with a asterisk beside that, because we're not sure what that looks like, and all applicable taxes.
moved by Counselor Sol. Do I have a seconder? Seconded. Second by Counselor Roper. Thank you very much. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That carries. Thank you very much. Okay, that brings us to admin report 0724, the Snowmobile Club Trail South Industrial Lands.
Good evening, Mayor and Councilors. Before you is a report that reflects a request from the Snowmobile Club to construct an off-road vehicle trail on property owned by the Northern Rockies Regional Municipality. On December 12th, 2022, which was some time ago, there was a report provided that introduced the idea to council. So just for the sake of the time that's passed, there's been some considerations that were included in the report as well. Things around land ownership and conformity to our OCP and zoning. A map has been included in attachment 1 that outlines the area that the club is interested in constructing the trail on. It would run essentially commencing at 55th Street and heading east for a distance of 2,200 meters up to the BC Hydro right away. staff have gone through and looked, have been working with tenure holders, specifically Northwest Tel, BC Hydro, and Fortis BC regarding crossing over the statutory right-of-ways. So at this time, because we're still waiting for Fortis BC to get back to the club, we're only seeking approval to construct the trail from 55th Street up to the BC Hydro right-of-way. There's also information in the report regarding public engagement, which was undertaken in early 2023, as well as correspondence with Fort Nelson First Nation. And as next steps, if council is agreeable to allowing the club to construct the trail, we would look to having an agreement in place prior to giving them consent to actually go out and construct. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Questions? Ms. Thompson? I think it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I don't have a question. I just think that this is a great idea simply because these surface-based use of assets that are already there that have no other, that have no other current use, have the potential in the future to still discuss original purposes and so on, but you get some good utility out of that area for a long, long time. So I think it's a great idea.
Well, and what was originally intended as phase 2 of the community trail, like a pedestrian trail, I mean, now is probably not really feasible, just given the lack of activity in that area. And I would say proximity to the landfill would be somewhat concerning. I know I tried to walk back there. There's a lot of wildlife sign. It's not exactly the best place to be walking through. But that said, we did confirm with the province that allowing a motorized trail in that area wouldn't conflict with the covenant through our sponsored Crown Grant.
Right. Councilor Enoch.
I agree with Danny as well. You all know that I'm a big push for the youth in this town. And I think just like restocking of the dugouts and supporting motocross and minor hockey, that the snowmobile club, they all create memories in our youth. Some of them go off to school. Some of them might come back. You know, they might want to raise their families, open a business, because those memories are etched in them.
Mhm.
So wherever we can make more, I think it's great.
Good. Any other comments? Council's wishes. There's a resolution on page 18. Recommendation. Would you like to read it, please?
I recommend the Regional Council permits Fort Nelson Snowmobile Club to construct an off-road vehicle trail on municipal land that has been designated for phase 2 community trail, legally described as blah, 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 blah. You got that, Jay? Thank you.
You're not quite finished. That takes you to attachment 1.
Put my glasses back on. So as shown in attachment 1, the Fort Nelson Snowmobile Club entering into a written agreement with the Northern Rockies Regional Municipality prior to construction.
Appropriately moved by Councilor Enoch. Do I have a seconder, please? Councilor Roper. Thank you. Is there any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? That passes. Thank you. That brings us to admin report 08, the tourism signage at the visitor center. Ms. Vandersteen, please.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Before you is a admin report outlining a opportunity that came up from Northern BC Tourism. They approached our visitor center with the opportunity to potentially install 2 signs. These signs would be connected with quite a few different planning processes that have been underway for the last couple of years, which are outlined in the report. I'm happy to go into more detail, but I tried to keep it as concise as possible. So it does connect well with our own tourism strategy, the Northeast Destination Development Strategy, and then from that strategy was created the Northern BC Thematic Framework and Great Northern Circle Route Signage Master Plans. So both of those are from kind of stream down from our regional destination development strategy. And then it also connects with the provincial project underway right now, which is called Invest in Iconics, which is a combination between preparing for international marketing of what they're terming as the North or the Great Wilderness, as well as connecting that new marketing effort with destination development and on the ground resources. So the signs there's a little picture in the report for you of what they could look like. And the location that we have talked to the rec center about that might be feasible and a great location for these signs. The rec center did not have any concerns about the signs being installed in this general area, as they're already cleaning and preparing the area and clearing of snow and that sort of maintenance. A quick update that has changed slightly from when the admin report was written is that the grant application was actually due last Friday. So the visitor center did put in a grant application, and then depending on what council's wishes are as of tonight, we can always withdraw that. And then with the costs, they did apply for a slightly higher portion. So they applied for about 49% of the total cost, which was about $25,000. And then Northern BC Tourism has identified that they do have that additional funding if we are not successful. I say we as the greater we, the visitor center, is not successful in the grant funding. Northern BC Tourism would contribute more to cover the second sign. And then this is also Northern BC Tourism has been in conversations with our Indigenous neighbors and would be creating all of the Indigenous components and stories and content in partnership with them, having their full approval on anything related to their Indigenous stories and content. Open for questions.
Thank you, Krista. Bev, would you like to make a comment before I open it up?
Sure, yeah. So this became possible because of Destination BC having a grant available to visitor centers, which was how my involvement in it took place. And our expectation is that these pillars and signs will meet the branding that is happening around the Great Northern Circle route. So we will have kind of that connection to the ongoing signs that are being placed at various Gotta Go locations. So I think it meets a lot of our plans moving forward from a tourism action committee perspective, as well as just meeting that branding and the fact that we have an opportunity to get $50,000 worth of signs at zero cost. I'm always for that. So thanks for your consideration.
Thank you. Does any council have any questions? I think the Great Northern Circle route was, the presentation was made to the past council. I'm familiar with these signs because of the Gotta Go project when I was involved with Peace River, and they sort of brought that whole concept to us and showed us what the signs could look like. These photos here on the bottom of page 23 do not do them justice at all. So, yeah, so I don't know if the new counselors, so I think it would really be Councilor Enax. Were you involved at all with the?
We seen them in the presentation. We went down to Fort St.
Oh.
John, Northeast
Okay,
BC. Yeah, they are beautiful signs.
yeah, okay. I asked staff if they could put their hands on a photo from, were you able to do that? Because I think Councilor Dickey would be the only one who hasn't seen the signs. So there are several different types of signs. These are the pillar type signs that they're planning for this one. Yeah.
The signs are kind of a stacked graphic like that on a pole. And then the pole has at the top, or the post has some stylized kind of like laser cut images.
Images on the
Yeah.
top of it. It's a basic outline of what the pillar looks like, and then the story is put on the front of it. Yeah. I'm told they're pretty easy to manage and maintain. The type of sign, it's aircraft aluminum, and I think that's in the report. But they're easy to look after, and I think it'd be a good addition to the community, and probably some of the first ones installed on the route, the entire route. So we'd be leaders there as well. Okay, with my comments. Anybody else? Questions?
I just have one question. Is there less pushback now than there was 10 years ago when they first established proposed the circle route idea? There was quite a bit of pushback when I was my early time on council, because it seemed to be that the circle route took over all of the narrative around the Alaska Highway, the milepost concept of the milepost here, milepost there, and so on. And I'm just kind of curious, because I haven't heard much feedback in recent history from our tourism peoples. Have you heard any more pushback of that nature in the last few years, in recent times?
I've heard all positive. Yeah, everybody's quite excited about the signs. Yeah.
I think back in the day, there was a lot of competition between communities as being the end destination. And I think people are starting to realize that people are coming to do the tour. They want to experience a lot. They're not coming to Fort Nelson, staying here and then go home, right? They're making the big tour. So you want to be part of that entire tour that they're on. And if you can, add a little bit of spice in your community to get them to stay for a couple of days, then you're doing really well. But they really want to do the whole route. And so if you make that consistent, if you make your signs similar to what they've experienced in another community that got their attention, just the style of the sign gets them to stop instead of just getting gas and heading on, right? Because they got information from the last one. If you started in Dawson Creek at mile 0, just about everybody who travels the highway as a tourist stops there. And if you can get them stopping there and reading those signs and getting used to them as being something that's interesting for them around the whole route, then you got them stopped. And if you got them stopped for more than gas, now you might get something else. You might get a night, you might get an extra day out of them. And with all that marketing and advertising that we plan on doing with the project that's soon to be released, I think all of that would be really good for us. So good. Council's wishes.
I'll make a motion that the Northern Rockies Regional Municipality support the proposed installation of 2 Great Northern Circle route signs, iconic destination signage at the Fort Nelson Visitor Center, and support the grant application from the Fort Nelson and District Chamber of Commerce, Fort Nelson Visitor Center operator to fund the project and accept ownership of the signs once fully installed.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Grewing, second by Councillor Anders. Is there any further discussion by council? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Okay, that brings us to report number 924, which is staff appointment, acting positions and responsibilities. Page 26. Staff, please.
This is just an annual activity as a supplement to the officer appointment delegation of authority bylaw. So we give it a internal review each year, and this year we've seen a few changes. So it's typically adopted as in a single resolution, and then it becomes an amendment to it becomes an appendix to the bylaw. So unless council has any other amendments they'd like to propose, this is as been recommended by staff.
Thank you. Council.
I'll just make a motion that the staff statutory and other appointments and acting positions be approved effective March 1st, 2024.
Thank you. Moved by Counselor Gruen, second by Counselor Souls. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. That brings us to admin report 1024, which is request of waiver at Art Fraser Park to the event fees for the Rib Fest.
I need to call.
Jonathan, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So at the Regional Council meeting held on February 12th, the partnership of the Northern Rockies Tourism and Event Society and Rotary Club presented a request via letter to waive the fees for a proposed Rib Fest event at Art Fraser Park. So we wanted to come back with what the costing of that would be. So the start of that is with Art Fraser Park to rent and use that facility. There is no cost associated with that. And we have power and water there accessible. So that part is no problem. With the showmobile rental, including the sound system, we've got the cost there for that rental, as well as the blue and red tents. So the total that they were looking for within that part is $1,745 plus GST, which would be the fees that we would need to waive. They had also expressed, they've also respect. I'll get there. There we go.
Tongue tied. First day with your new tongue.
All right. They had also expressed a request to have tables and chairs as well, which is not something that we traditionally do as a rental item outside of the rec center. There is a local company in town that does this as event rentals, so we don't want to compete with the business. We want to allow that business to continue. However, there is the opportunity. We do have some limited quantities of outdoor tables and chairs that we have for some of our own events that we could lend out or rent out if the need was there. That is over and above what the local options are. So that is an option as well. It will be over and above the original cost. And then further to that discussion, it helped illustrate some sort of a discussion around the, I'm gonna read it here to make sure I don't mess it up, the government transfer policy, which is currently under development, and then which would also ultimately incorporate the current discretionary grants and aid policy, and as well the recreation center rental exemption policy. And there was quite a good discussion around that, and maybe some needs for some review and updates to those. So the recreation center exemption policy is due, particularly in light of other policy developments that are occurring. I'm really getting this today. This one specifically lists some events and functions that are eligible for exemption that haven't used it in quite some time. But the policy itself does not speak to the overall values or principles that council wishes to realize with its implementation, or clearly define what might be included as user fee. So from that, we've come up with a couple of recommendations for you. The recommended one to start with is that the Fort Nelson Rotary Club and Fort Nelson Tourism and Event Society request for a waiver of fees for Rib Fest be approved in principle, and that staff be directed to research and present a draft recreation center rental exemption policy for council's consideration. The second option is that the discretionary grant and aid policy be waived, and that the Fort Nelson Rotary Club and Fort Nelson Tourism and Event Society request for a waiver of fees for Rib Fest be approved in an amount not to exceed $2,000. And the third option is that the Fort Nelson Rotary Club and Fort Nelson Tourism and Event Society request for a waiver of fees for Rib Fest not be approved.
Thank you. Are there questions for Jonathan? I think it's pretty straightforward. Thank you. Thank you for the report, and thank you for giving it to us. Councilor Andrews?
I would just like to make a recommendation for number one, that the Fort Nelson Rotary Club and Fort Nelson Tourism and Event Society request for a waiver of fees for Rib Fest be approved in principle, and that the staff be directed to research and present a draft recreation center rental exemption policy for council's consideration.
Moved by Councilor Andrews. Do I have a seconder? Seconded. Thank you. Councilor Roper seconds it. Is there any further discussion or question? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Yeah, thank you. That brings us to 8, 8.1 and 8.2, 8.3, 8.4, which is information package. There is no correspondence for discussion. Did I go? Yeah. Could I have a motion to accept 8.1 to 8.4 for information? Please?
So moved.
Moved by Counselor Sol, second by Counselor Gerwin. Thank you. All in favor? Opposed? That carries. That brings us to new business 9.1, which is the ranger discussion.
I
Counselor
was,
Anders.
thank you. I was talking with the local ranger today and he said that there is a availability for funds if requested by a community, if for needed training. We were talking about EOC training and the potential of having to source out emergency management people. And that if there was a request put in from council to the rangers, that there's a potential they could find funding to get that training within the rangers to help during emergencies. And that they're willing to talk with staff and find some alignments.
Do you know if the deputy CAO is aware of that?
I don't know. Yeah, so it's something we can take a look at for sure.
Sure.
And contact us for sure.
Okay, good idea. Thank you. So just direction to staff to contact the rangers and have a discussion.
Yeah, just a
Okay.
sharing of information. Yeah.
Good, thank you. Okay, that brings us to standing items. Are there any council reports? Let's.
You've all heard it. Heritage Days was on the weekend. It was great. I got the lucky day on Saturday because it was a lot warmer than Sunday, cooking the bannock. And then Sunday we cheered on our streepers. And we were heartbroken by seconds, but that's okay. Buddy came in third. So next year could be number 11. That's it.
Councilor Growing?
Yeah, I'll be brief too. February 15th, I attended the BC Rural Health Network Implementation Committee. We had a really interesting discussion on long-term care across the province. And on the 15th, I attended the Lamplighters Board meeting. Following day, I attended the BC Rural Health Network Board meeting with a presentation and discussion with Leanne Hempel, she is the Executive VP and Chief Ambulance Officer for BC Emergency Health Services. I asked a couple of questions. She was well aware that the group was going to be meeting with us today, so that was good. And then February 21st, I attended the first meeting of the OCP Advisory Committee. So that's it, thanks.
Thank you. So for this meeting, all I really have to report is that I had 2 interviews with CBC on the fire situation that's happening out there with overwintering fires. So once in national and once with CBC Daybreak. Essentially talked about, the concern in the community with respect to the fires that are still burning out there and the potential if we don't get some kind of a wet spring, that we could have a very early fire season and the concern that we have with that. They asked, what are you guys doing about it? I talked about, what are some of the things that we're working on as a community? And I talked about, staff working with the provincial agencies that we had some difficulties with, I guess, over the summer with respect to coordination, understanding of responsibilities and getting that all straight. Hoping that they will be able to put some local staff in place to assist us when the provincial staff move out of here, as they always do when the fires start burning in the much more populated areas in the south. Talked about the new position, the wildfire prevention officer, I called it, that's in our budget, that we purchased the wildfire structural protection unit. That should be here in the spring. That we'd be pushing on the BC Fire Smart program to get as much education out as we can, particularly in the wildland urban interface, WUI area, which is a rural area around us, to help those residents understand how to, protect their properties with respect to ground fuels and fire ladders and fuels around their buildings and that sort of thing. And then finally, the fact that we'll be meeting with the BC Wildfire Service on March the 11th at the council meeting in March. So, we've got a few things going on in the community. as well as our staff are constantly updating the emergency evacuation plan. And so I think we've got some good things on the go there. So that's mainly at the discussion I had with CBC, both on the national as well as CBC Daybreak. I do have a report to give you in the closed meeting with respect to some of the discussions around RCMP. So that's all I had. Anybody else? No? Okay. Thank you. Are there any notice of motion? Seeing none, the public, this is an opportunity for the public to speak to anything that was in, ask questions that are on the agenda. Mrs. Vandersteen, please.
Thank you one more time, Mayor and Council. I just wanted to thank you for your approval of Admin Report 8. I think the signage will provide a focal point for our local stories and give people something else to do at the visitor center. So fingers crossed on that grant application. And I also wanted to send some kudos out to the Recreation Center. Jonathan Zawerks, I sent him an email this morning. I had a couple of travelers into the visitor center this morning, traveling from Alaska to Texas. And while I can't take much credit for it in the winter months, it's all the rec center. The quote I have for you is, "These are the cleanest washrooms in the world." So,
well, at least between Alaska and Fort Nelson.
Well, Alaska and Texas,
maybe, yeah.
So yes, I just did want to pass that on. We really do appreciate the work that the rec center staff does on behalf of the visitor center, particularly in the winter months when I don't have seasonal staff. So wanted to bring that to your attention. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Go ahead.
If I may, Mayor, I'll just add to that, because we received some feedback over the event that happened a couple of weeks ago at the rec center with the significant activities that occurred that weekend with the U15. And just for council's information, we're not blessed with a large casual staffing complement to help with surge capacity for a couple of reasons. It's just we've seen some of the comments in the community, and by all means, it's people interested in coming to work for us, and come on in, we can use your help. But that said, the other challenge you run into is during our regular operations, we have a staffing complement to look after our activities, and we don't have that surge capacity during those significant events. They don't happen regularly enough to maintain a staffing complement. So we got slammed pretty good a couple weeks ago at the rec center. But just to put it into perspective, from Friday evening till including Saturday and Sunday, and then Monday, which we were only open for 4 hours, we had over 5,400 people walk through the doors at rec center in one weekend. Now, that's not 5,400 different people. You're going to have the naysayers say, "Oh yeah, there wasn't 5,400 people."
It was 1,005 times.
But it doesn't make a difference if one person. Yeah, and that's the thing. It doesn't make a difference if one person walks out the door and walks in 5,400 times. They're bringing the same amount of dirt.
Yeah.
Deal with the same amount. So there was a significant amount of activity. The staff were working extremely hard, worked long hours to get through that weekend with what was going on. I think it was a successful weekend for us internally in terms of how it was dealt with. But we're well aware that the service levels that are typically seen at the rec center in terms of the cleanliness and whatnot weren't where they typically are. But again, it was just something that we just didn't have the ability to keep up with. So I wanted to throw that out there and definitely appreciate Deb's comments, because it's it's important that the group is recognized in terms of.
Good. Hopefully you'll pass that along. Jonathan, pass that along to your staff over there. They're doing the best we can, and we recognize that. Thank you. Any other public questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, we have a resolution to move into a closed meeting pursuant to section 91B of the Community Charter. Personal information of identifiable information who may be considered for municipal award or honor, or who has offered to provide a gift to the municipality on condition of anonymity. So moved. Moved by Councilor Roper, second by Councilor Andrews. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much. We'll move into. Thank you. We have completed the closed portion of the meeting tonight. We do have a report to rise with, so if I could get the corporate manager to make that report, please.
Moved by Counselor Gerwing, seconded by Counselor Andrews, that Mark and Danver Salvatier's application to the Northern Rockies Recruitment, Retention, Education, and Training Incentive Program be approved in principle, subject to confirmation of eligibility with their health employer, carried unanimously. And moved by Counselor Andrews, seconded by Counselor Souls, that Dr. Alexandria Hall's application to the Northern Rockies Recruitment, Retention, Education, and Training Incentive Program be approved in principle, subject to confirmation of eligibility, and carried with Counselors Gerwing and Enax as opposed. And that's all.
Thank you. Adjournment is in order, please. Move by Counselor Dickey, second by Counselor Roper. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, everybody.